Evening, everyone. Welcome to the Forth Tay Branch. I hope everybody is well. I'm going to crack on and get straight onto our speaker. I'd like to invite Sandy Fowler, the Vice Chair, to introduce our guest speaker, please.
Well, good evening, guests, and it's my pleasure this evening to introduce this evening's speaker, which is Andrew Paine. And Andrew is going to be giving a presentation on burnout, why it doesn't just happen to workaholics, and ways to stop it. Andrew basically vastly experienced in delivering, coaching, group workshops and keynote talks. He is a TEDx and approved Vistage speaker and an ICF accredited coach, working with small to mid-sized businesses, working with entrepreneurs, charities, schools and colleges. Alongside coaching and speaking, Andrew is a campaigner and advocate for all victims of domestic abuse, having personally experienced abuse in a former marriage. He's a trustee for a charity which supports families where children are the perpetrators of domestic abuse. And he works closely with a homelessness prevention charity, delivering the HR and fundraising lead. He's a father of 5, which means he's a maid, taxi driver, war zone reporter, health and safety officer, and chief negotiator, and unappreciated fashion consultant. So welcome, Andrew, and thank you for attending tonight to give your speech, and over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Sandy. Really appreciate it. When you think about the 21st century, what a roller coaster ride it has been. When you think about how it kicked off with 9/11, most of us who remember it, we know where we were when that happened, that terrible and surreal day. And then we had Afghanistan, we had Iraq, we had promises of no return to boom and bust, then boom, there was bust, there was the recession that came along and the years of austerity that followed it. And then with all the pain and suffering from austerity, and someone thought it'd be a good idea within that pain and suffering to hold a referendum, and all the angst around referendum, all the division that came out of that. Who would have imagined we'd experience a man like Donald Trump in power in America? When you think about all the division around Brexit and everything, even now, the division that exists, when you think about social media, we didn't have that before the 21st century, and now we do. And the impact on mental health. Yes, there's some good stuff that's come from social media, but it has transformed how we interact. It has polarized discussions. When you think about the environmental crisis, I'm 47. And I remember the early 90s, there was talk about the environment, kind of whispers that things weren't all great. And now it's very clear we have an unfolding catastrophe that we're part of. It seems like an insurmountable problem. And then what about COVID that came along? First of all, it was in China. Oh, it will never come over here. And then it was in Italy, and then it was getting closer and closer. And before long, the great British nation that saw off the Nazis, now we were fighting each other in Aldi car parks over loo rolls. When you think about it, it's been a roller coaster ride. And therefore, we shouldn't be surprised to see the word burnout popping up all over the place. In fact, Google confirms that the number of searches on the term burnout have doubled. I'm surprised it's not more. No one on this session would be surprised that over half of workplace absence is caused by stress and mental health. And no one would be surprised that more than a third of UK employees would not feel comfortable sharing concerns around their mental health and stress with their line managers. And so, given that the problems we face as a world aren't going anywhere, given that we are reluctant in some ways to talk about burnout, then it is especially important that we do talk about burnout, that we understand its triggers, we understand its effect, and we develop some techniques for handling burnout. So that's what we're going to look at today in the time that we have available. It's going to be interactive. I'm really relaxed. If people want to ask questions, if I say something that's not clear, if I'm going too quickly, do unmute, do ask, that's okay. I'll stop. I'll try to answer your question as best I can, but I'm going to be looking at defining burnout, but then also thinking about some strategies. How do we deal with burnout, this thing? So before I get started, and in thinking of defining burnout, I'd like to pick on Ian Leslie to unmute. And Ian, if you could give us your definition of burnout, what does it mean to you as a starting point? And then when you've done that, you can choose someone else, whoever you want, to give us their definition of burnout as well?
Okay, sure. So I would say burnout for me is just, I would say, exhaustion from your job, and I think there's probably quite a few people on the call today that would agree. The last period, the last 18 months, particularly challenging for that health and safety guy within the environment, with not just your normal stuff, but the complete COVID thing, and having to deal with that on top of everything else as well. And certainly for me, you know, without seeing the rest of this presentation, I would say I was probably burnt out last year.
Okay,
I would definitely say that.
Okay, thank you for sharing it. Can you choose somebody else on this session to give us their definition of burnout?
Sure. So I can't see everyone on my screen, but I can see Alistair there.
Alistair, can you unmute Alistair? You've been nominated.
Hi there. My definition of burnout, mental fatigue, I would say, for me, over very much like Ian, over the past 18 months, very stressful with the extra workload. The wonderful digital age we're in, we're constantly contactable. So with your phone, your iPad, whatever it is, you are under constant harassment, if you like. Emails at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And just with the type of work that we do, you feel it's a question about COVID, it's a question about safety in your organisation. I'll have to answer this. It's just that pressure to be on call, 24/7.
Okay.
The mental strain in the morning of, oh, there's the alarm clock, I really don't want to go in.
Yeah.
You're just so physically tired, like what Ian was saying, and yeah, just stress.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We'll have one more definition. So do you want to nominate one other person on this session? Whoever you want, I don't mind.
Yeah, I can't see many people on the top of the screen.
Do you want me to nominate someone then?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so Dawn McLean, I can see you there. If you wouldn't mind unmuting and just giving us your definition of burnout, and then we'll move on.
I think you're looking at it, Andrew, to be fair. If you could hear me, this is my voice getting better. I think physically and probably mentally, I feel bashed. I said to somebody today, I feel like I could buckle at the knees. And I'm like looking forward to my Christmas break, because I'm hoping that this Christmas we won't have any major, touching wood as we speak, but changes to the COVID restrictions that like we did last Christmas. So we just came off for break last year, and on the 26th of December, or just before that, they changed all the restrictions. And so I was, like most of my colleagues, I'm sure, on call all Christmas break last year. And I just don't, even though I've had the odd holiday off work, it's so difficult to come down from that. So your holiday is halved, because by the time you actually feel relaxed, you're almost going back to work again. So yeah, I think that my physical health has suffered over the past 12 months, I would say. I know it's been 18 months, but I was very vibrant at the beginning and very, ready to help, but then it's slowly waned throughout the process. But very much like Alistair says, you feel like in your position at the moment, you are the go-to person. Everyone is looking to you for answers.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm finding with a lot of people, there's a fear of going away on holiday and having a break because of what they will then come back to. So that is compounding the issue. Does anybody know what the official World Health Organization definition is of burnout? There is an official definition out there. And if not, I'll just give you a moment for anybody to jump in if they want to. I'm not seeing anyone. So what I'll do, I will share my screen and start a PowerPoint now that's going to run alongside me. If for some reason this doesn't work, then it's fine. I'll just make do without it. It's not a problem. You should be seeing a blank screen. But now what should happen is the slide should move, and they're not. So let me just try one more time. And if so, I'll have to try and ditch without it. Hang on a second. Yeah, that hasn't worked. So I'll try one more time. And then if it doesn't work, I'll just go without. Right, from the beginning. And so let's just see. Yeah, that's not working out terribly well. So, here we go. Thankfully, woo! We have, so the world definition, organization definition of burnout is chronic workplace stress that has not been well managed. And it lists 3 key symptoms of burnout that I think we need to consider and be aware of. You've got exhaustion, and we're not meaning, oh, well, actually, you could just have a break over the weekend and you'll be okay, and a holiday will solve it. You're talking absolute and utter exhaustion, physical, mental, emotional. There is nothing left in the tank at all. But then, of course, that leads to sort of negativity and cynicism about the situation that you face, because it feels like it's just so unfair and that the world is stacked against you. And I find with people that I've been working out where they've been burnt out, you can become quite paranoid just about stuff, become chronic worriers where they weren't before, which of course then leads to poor time efficiency. The stuff that would have taken you 15 minutes to do now takes hours. You just can't drag yourself forward to do the things that you need to do. Now, there is an argument within the HR world that burnout is a workplace thing. It is an occupational hazard, and we shouldn't confuse burnout with stuff going on at home. And there's also a debate that rages, well, isn't burnout just the same as depression? How are they different? And to say that the argument rages is overdoing it, but the argument is ongoing. The argument is ongoing. That is depression burnout? Is burnout depression?
Andrew, it's Margaret Kennedy here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there seems to be a very odd couple of blocks that are on front of your presentation. I think lots of us are seeing that.
I'll stop sharing my screen. That's what I'll do.
I'm going to give it one more go, and then if the boxes are coming up again, then we'll...
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I've got a weird box on mine. I must admit, I've never had this before, but if it doesn't work, then let's just ditch them and go without, because otherwise we're just going to lose time. We go from there. So what have you got now? I can see a panel now, which is better than it was before.
Yeah, I don't see
that's fine now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for stopping it. So is it depression or is it burnout? And there really is no clear conclusion. But my problem with the HR view that burnout should just be this workplace thing is I do work with the long-term unemployed, and they show signs of burnout, and yet they don't even have a job. And my view of burnout is we need to consider what's going on at work. Of course we do. But we also need to consider what's going on at home. And if I think about my own 2 experiences of burnout, the first time where I was absolutely burnt out, I was in an abusive marriage, as it was referred to in the introduction, and I was having panic attacks. I was a chronic worrier. I'd lost a lot of weight. Family were worried. I was often asked if I really need to go to the doctor. There's obviously something that's really serious. I just lived in fear. I was a chronic nail biter. And when I came out of that situation, I literally crashed for a couple of years. But then more recently, during the COVID lockdown, I'm blissfully remarried now to a wonderful woman, but we have 3 boys under 9. She's an NHS key worker. So in lockdown, I've got my own business. We've got stuff going on. I was working till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Our 2-year-old was getting us up by sort of 6. And I was becoming irrationally angry and depressed and down. And I started to see that actually I'm on the road to burnout here. And so I had a conversation with my wife, and we sort of sorted out some things. And, it didn't help that on the parent WhatsApp chats, there's always a parent whose kid has smashed homeschooling by 10 o'clock in the morning, and they're now making cakes for the NHS key workers. And my kids are on their 9th episode of Kung Fu Panda, refusing to work. And so there's the whole guilt as well that went with that. But in both situations, work was not the key thing, or at least in COVID, it wasn't the only thing. There were a blend of things that put me in this burnout situation. Now, I think if we approach burnout and we say, well, look, let's look at work, then let's look at home. Let's look at them as two separate things, but let's not lose sight of the stuff that goes on at home that also completely exhausts us and has an impact, therefore, on work. If we approach both things, then we are going to make quicker progress with burnout rather than just focusing on work. But let's start focusing on work just to begin with. And there was some research done by the Harvard Business Review that there are 6 key triggers when it comes to burnout in the workplace. And now the slide deck has actually gotten stuck. So I'm going to actually stop sharing completely because it's not moving. And the 6 key triggers, these include unfairness. And an unfairness, I appreciate, is down to discretion to some point. But the granddaddy of these sort of 6 key triggers is long hours and an overwhelming workload. And I don't know whether, I mean, from the feedback you've given me, that is coming across, the long hours and the pressure that you're under and being constantly contactable are key triggers for you. But just throwing it back at you a moment, are there any other triggers that you think you face in the workplace that I've not yet mentioned, that you think is prevalent? Because I mentioned 6. I'll mention what they are, but before I go into some of those 6, I just wonder whether you yourselves could think of any others that you've seen at work. Does anyone want to unmute? If not, it's fine, I can carry on.
Yeah, I think not being heard or appreciated at work can cause burnout, and also constant change. Yeah. Those are the things that I feel affect me the most, or job security itself.
Yeah,
like and there's constant restructures, and there's always the threat of having to re-interview for a similar position.
Yeah. And the problem with appreciation when we're in crisis is often when we're in crisis, our heads go down and we just focus on our own stuff. And appreciation, when I work with really healthy teams, it goes sideways, it goes from bottom to top, it goes from top to bottom. And once you start to get some people where they make it their habit to truly appreciate and appreciate in a meaningful and specific way, then that can start a revolution of appreciation. But what isn't helpful is meaningless appreciation. So I always remember joining a band and a guy telling me that I was fantastic, but he could never completely tell me why I was fantastic. And then I realized he was telling everyone else that they were fantastic without any, that's meaningless. But real specific appreciation, that requires you to be looking at, to really be investing in a relationship with somebody else, because otherwise you're not going to know, well, is this a better thing than it was the day before? You're not going to know unless you know that person. You can only truly appreciate if you have real relationships in place. The thing with long hours is that we can tell ourselves, well, I'll be all right for a while. I'm quite tough, so I'll be able to cope with this. But burnout affects anyone and everyone. In fact, the World Health Organization did some research that back in 2016, they worked out that 745,000 people died across the globe due to a heart attack or stroke that could be attributed to working excessive hours for prolonged periods of time. Now, they didn't drop dead at the time that they were working those hours. The impact came later, but you're talking about early mortality. You're not talking about a bit of stress and a headache and a bit of time off and then you're back in the running. Burnout is a serious thing. It has serious implications and no one is immune from it. The second point I want to make about burnout is when we're under huge levels of stress, it has now been suggested, or I would say proven in some of the best books around decision-making and psychology, that self-discipline, our ability to draw on self-discipline decreases when we are tired, because self-discipline requires a lot of really good brain processing power. And you don't have that in such levels when you're getting burned out. And so bad habits and burnout tend to go hand in hand, because your self-control and your self-discipline can't function in the way that it would if you weren't overloaded. So that's the second thing. So just at a time when you really should be looking after yourself in terms of exercise, in terms of food, in terms of the way you live your life, if you're burning out, you are less likely to be making good decisions about looking after yourself, because you are less likely to be able to draw on your self-discipline, which is so important if we're going to be making good decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to come in and say, sorry, one of the other things that I've found over particularly, I mean, it's always the case with health and safety, but I think particularly the last 18 months has been conflict. So the conflict between, you know, senior managers wanting the business to run and us saying, no, you know, it can't be normal. It's not normal. And so I think that has been one of the other things that I found is the constant battle that has been exhausting. I think so. So relationships, conflict at work is I think another trigger.
Okay. Does anybody else resonate with that? Would anyone else say conflict? We've got some nodding heads as I go across the panel, and of course there's.
Yeah, sorry. Can I just?
Yeah.
Kenny, you want to go first?
No, on you go. I'll come in.
I think as well during this COVID time, what I've experienced as well is you suddenly have to become a subject matter expert on a secondary task that you've never done before to keep the job going. If people are working from home, we're in a manufacturing plant, so we were at work, and all these other tasks get lumped on top of you, whilst trying to deal with something you've got no experience of, COVID. So all that is piling on as well, and money is king. So production's still got to go ahead, but trying to do it safely and then trying to fit in all these other tasks, that's just been impossible.
Okay, that's interesting. And how have you found with that pressure and these tasks, how have you, being at home, how have you found your management of your time? Has that been an issue for you?
Exhaustion every night, no time to do anything. The weekends are far too short, and I've reverted back to smoking cigars after stopping. Okay.
Well, what I want to say is, when it comes to working the long hours, we know that in Iceland, for example, where they've experimented with working less hours, that burnout has reduced, but overall output has not reduced. But obviously, if you're in a situation where you're not in control of your hours, you're in a situation you can't do a lot about. The one thing I would say is, when I manage my time more effectively, and there's two ways of doing this. So when I'm not on top of managing my time, I don't get as much done. And there's just a few little things that I do that help me to manage my time, just a few little things. And they don't take away the pressures completely. They don't make the job easier, but somehow when I've got these things in place, I definitely am able to get more done. And I wonder if I could just share with you some of the things that I do that have helped me to work a little bit less. One thing that I do is, and this has been explained, this has been mentioned about how we are always available because of technology. So one thing I do through the day, I know that I can't have my data mobile and Wi-Fi off my phone all day, because people need to get hold of me and I need to be able to respond. But when I plan my day, when I schedule out, I have like an A4 hardback diary, and I block out hours of time each day. And I spend from Tuesday to Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, at the beginning of the day, I'll just have 10 or 15 minutes in planning where I'm not going through my emails. I'm just thinking about what I need to do, where I'm going to have time on my emails, where I'm going to do, for me, it would be creative work, the important longer term work, and trying to fit that in. And I will schedule in when my data mobile and Wi-Fi is off on my phone. And I'll schedule in when I turn it back on, and my phone will go crazy. It will download everything that's going on in WhatsApp and things like that. But by planning my day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, having that 10 or 15 minutes planning and scheduling in when I'm going to actually have my emails shut down, when am I going to have them on, and trying to stick to that. So for me, I need to be logging into my emails 4 or 5 times a day without a shadow of a doubt. And I'll have maybe half an hour of through the day of blocks of time. But then the other parts of the day, I'll have it off. So it just makes such a difference. I'm more focused then on the tasks that I have to do. I don't have all my browsers open either. I only work with 1 or 2 browsers open. Otherwise, the screen gets messy. And then when you're trying to focus on something, you can hear it pinging away in the background. The other thing is, on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when I plan my day to begin with, sort of 10 or 15 minutes, on a Monday, I actually spend about 20 minutes in planning, because I plan Monday and then I'm looking at the week ahead. And on the first Monday of each month, I actually spend 45 minutes in planning, because I'm planning the day, the week, and the month. And these little protocols help me to have some kind of a system that just helps me to get more done. It's not a concrete system. I don't use it to punish myself with. If I can't get done what I need to, I don't feel guilty about that. But having this kind of guide that I write myself on a hardback diary, it's not on a screen, has really helped me to manage my time. I genuinely get more done when I'm working with some kind of a schedule. I even have this thing where on a Tuesday, if I don't get done a task that I need to get done, so on Wednesday I'm planning, I look back, I didn't get it done Tuesday, I move the task across, but I give it a black dot, literally just draw a black dot next to it. If I then have to move it across another day to Thursday, because stuff happened, I didn't get it done Wednesday, I'll give it a second black dot. If I have to move it across to Friday, I'll give it a third black dot, but now it has 3 black dots. I'll interrogate the task. I'll say, what is going on? Why have I delayed? Is this task important? Is it just a bad week? Should I schedule it in for next month? But by having just some little systems, it does help me to get more done, to manage my social media, to manage my emails as best I can. I actually know a guy who, he only responds to his emails 2 days a week. Now, most of us mere mortals can't do that. But he will auto respond, and he will tell people when he is available on his email. I mean, I wish I could do what he does, but I think trying to take some control over our emails, trying to manage our own time, say, okay, when am I going to look at my emails? Actually, at 6 o'clock, am I going to turn off my laptop and that's it? And if I'm going to turn it back on when the kids are in bed at 10 o'clock for half an hour, that's what it is. And I'm then not going to turn it back on for any more than that. And some of it is having your own rules and protocols. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't stop having stuff dumped on you, but having some systems in place that you can use to manage that will be helpful. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who say, well, I'm a maverick. I don't work with a guide and a diary, and I just create. But usually the mavericks I work with, they're all over the place with their work and what they're doing and when things are getting done. And the great thing about having some kind of a system is it's there, it's written down. Otherwise, I forget what's going on. My life's too complicated. I've got 5 kids. I wouldn't know what was going on if I didn't have some kind of a system. So my encouragement definitely to you, if you're overworked, is to try and create, I'm sure you plan your time anyway, but to try and create some of your own protocols and systems that help you to have time in the day where you're not beholden to technology, even if it's just small pockets of time in the day that just give you some respite from that screen. Because the problem is we spend so much time on the screen, and then more often than not, many of us in the evening, we then go to the TV and then our laptop's back on, and then we're on the iPad and we just in front of a screen all day. And some of the fatigue is screen fatigue. The other thing, I don't know if any of you do this, but when I was in my abusive marriage, I did something that just about kept my head above water. So at the end of that time, yes, I was burnt out, but there was something left of me. And I played football every Monday. And I had beers after that football. And I realized that that was a lifeline that kept me sane. By Tuesday morning, I was already looking forward to the following Monday where I play football again. And so when I was struggling in COVID lockdown, I'm talking to my wife, we were like, actually, we need to create our own happy anchor again that gives us some purpose and structure that is something to really look forward to amongst all the stress and nonsense and chaos that's going on. And so we created, well, the kids refer to it as Pizza Friday. We refer to it as Red Wine Friday. So we decided to stop drinking alcohol in the week. We were literally Sunday to Friday, no alcohol. But on a Friday, we'd start buying wine from the Wine Society because we were now drinking less alcohol. And we'd have a fantastic bottle of wine. We would cook pizzas with the kids. We'd have salsa music on in the background to create this kind of happy anchor. And it really, really helped in both situations to create this kind of happy purpose, happy bit of structure to the week. And so if you are in a situation of extreme stress and work is getting on top of you, which for so many of us it is, I would say, well, do any of you have any happy anchors? Something that you do in the week that gives you a huge level of joy, that definitely is happening every week. So by the time it's just happened, it's not that long till the next time it happens. And if you do, can you add in extra elements to beef up the level of joy that you feel when you do that thing? Because more often than not, when we're just consumed and we can feel so worn down by everything that's going on, we need a glimmer of hope that comes regularly. We need some kind of beacon of light in our lives. Does anybody here have a particularly happy anchor that they do on a weekly basis? Anyone want to share?
Yep. I don't know if you can hear me okay, can you?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. So when I think about the highlights of my week, maybe I'm a wee bit sad, I don't know. But I love a Monday night. I'm not a great telly watcher, but I love Monday night in the telly because all the quizzes are on. So you have your mastermind, then you have your Only Connect, and then you have your university challenge. You know, and I'm not an academic person, but I just find it fascinating. I find people's brains fascinating. And both.
Is it something that you really look forward to?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And when the Only Connect comes to the end of its season, or university challenge, I'm actually at a loss. I'm really struggling about looking for something to really re-engage me, you know.
Yeah. And I've noticed someone, yeah, that thank you for sharing that. And someone in the chat has said that they're doing yoga and it helps a lot. And you might think, even if you think about my situation, what, a bottle of wine, making some pizza with your kids and some salsa. It's such a joyful occasion every Friday. Even since lockdown, we continue to do it. But if we suggest something other than pizza, the kids are not happy. I tell you, by Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm already thinking about this wine that I'm going to drink. So when I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling rubbish about what's going on, I have this thing, and yet by Monday, it's not actually that long till Friday. And when we're under pressure, we need these things. Someone else has put gardening, that's great. But make sure that amidst the pressures you face, whatever joyful thing you have, you are doing it once a week, that it is happening. Because it's otherwise your world will feel so bleak and you just be consumed by just pressure. But if you have that beacon, that happy anchor, that's a good start. Long dog walks out in morning while son is playing hockey. I like that. That sounds like bliss. Band practice, they're beginning to come in. As well as a happy anchor, I think there are some important mindset shifts where we need to think about, if we know we're in a situation of burnout and we swimming in the cold sea, that is hardcore. There are some mindset shifts. So if we know we're in a situation of burnout, we can't easily escape from it. We need to adjust our thinking a little bit just to help us deal with it. First thing I would say is you have to choose to park some stuff in your life. If you are just overwhelmed with what you have to do, then something must give, or something must be put to one side, if at all possible. So we all think, you know, in today's society that we should be able to have what we want now. I mean, I remember when cassettes were around, if I was listening to a song I didn't like, I'd forward wind, and then I go too far and have to rewind, and then just about, it'd take me a while. Eventually you get to the song Now it's just Alexa next, Alexa next. So you Amazon 20, next day delivery, TV on demand. We think that we just want stuff now. So parking stuff and admitting that actually I can't have it right now is really hard, but it's quite liberating. And it's not the same as procrastination, because when you procrastinate, you mindlessly put something to one side. You keep doing so for no good reason. When you park something, you put something to one side because actually there's a very good reason. You are overwhelmed. And so some things are put off. For example, for us, we're one of these families that have put off having a dog. Kids are desperate for a dog, but I am too stretched in too many areas. I would have liked to have had a dog by now, but now is not the right time. That it will happen probably in the next couple of years, but not right now. Some things you have to park. They might be personal things that you park. They might be ambitions that you have at work. So during COVID, I parked my business in order to do a better job of homeschooling, because I was rubbish at homeschooling. I really wasn't coping particularly well with it. I am not a good homeschooling father. I really am not. So I had to put my business to one side. I just couldn't juggle both things. And now we're out of lockdown, albeit for now. The business is motoring again, and that's great. What are you going to park? Is there something that you can easily put to one side? Or you could modify it and say, well, actually, what can you choose that's sort of trivial that you could lower your standards on? So for us, we home cook from scratch. And so we cook much more simple meals in the week now so that we don't overstretch ourselves. And that then has an impact on work. They're still healthy, but they're simple. Lower your standards on trivial things. Choose which things you're going to say, actually, I choose to draw back on this and I'll deliver well on this thing. But you can't deliver high standards on everything. If you're a perfectionist, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you can't. So you have to start thinking, well, I've got to do this thing, but this thing can be done to a moderately good standard. This thing I'll just do the bare basics on, and this thing I'll do well on. But stop driving yourself to deliver perfect on everything, because you can't. The other thing I would say is I've found that you work hard, you go to university, you do your job, you're a nice person. So you expect to have good things. You expect to be acknowledged for your work. And that's okay. But often our expectations are actually unrealistic. We build up these kind of view in our mind of what we should have, but actually we're not entitled to anything. So anything that we do have is actually a gift. So if your mates have got iPhones and you've got a rubbish 2G phone, that's all you can afford, that's still a gift. There's plenty of people in the world that don't even have a phone. But letting go of this sense of entitlement, like I should have that car, I should have this, that has helped me to step back and say, actually, anything that I have is a gift. And when I think about people worse off than me, actually, I'm very privileged. So for me to be stuck at home homeschooling my children, I'm lucky to be around my kids. I'm going to stop beating myself up about the work that I can't get done. Now, of course, for those of you that are employed, you have to deliver for your employers. But by letting go of certain expectations, by letting go of this sense of entitlement that most of us do feel if we work hard, that we are therefore entitled to X, Y, and Z, and we're not. And letting go of that is helpful. The other thing, I want to just, because I'm conscious of time and I want to open up questions and answers. But I do want to share this. When I was in my lowest moment, when I was moved back to my parents' house, and when I'd been married to my ex-wife, I'd had a business, we had 2 properties, we had cars, we had a lot of wealth. And then my business collapsed in the recession, as well as getting divorced. And I moved back to my parents' spare bedroom, and I felt like a total failure. And in my lowest moments, you know, those inspirational quotes like, it's not about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain, and all those quotes that are so annoying when your life is tough. They're just, and you think, well, I've been dancing in the rain a long time. I'm wet and cold. I just want to get home. Like, do you know what? I want the storm to pass. And so I was thinking, when I was in my lowest moments, I was like, surely there's something that can help me. surely there's something that can really help me to move forward, but I don't know what it is, and I can't seem to find it. And then I bumped into a guy called Mark Sheasby, who's a sports psychologist. Now, you have to be careful which Mark Sheasby you speak to, because there's also a Mark Sheasby who's a known serial fraudster, and you don't want to talk to him. But sports psychologist Mark Sheasby, he challenged me and he said, Andrew, what I want you to do, I know that you like football, so on Match of the Day, to the interviews of the managers after the games, I want you to really pay attention to those interviews. And I want you to pick up some of the language patterns and then come back to me. And I realized as I started to pick up some, because I was doing some work with this guy, Mark Sheasby, I realized that actually, yeah, there are some patterns, there are some things that fantastic leaders do in their language that we as mere mortals can use. And so there's 4 things that they do, and they spell an acronym, TEST, T-E-S-T. Gotta love an acronym. The first thing that Premier League managers do, and this is, we can use this stuff when we ourselves are facing adversity. And the first thing a good Premier League manager will do is, when interviewed, if his team has lost, he'll use words like, I'm disappointed today with how things are. We're not performing at the moment in the way that we know they are. The first thing, the letter T, is for temporary. They use language that deliberately creates a temporary surrounding to this problem that they've faced, this setback. And they may even go further and start, they'll say things like, we never get opened up like that if they lost 4-0, i.e. they're creating this temporary sense by using the word never in a very clever way. But when you're facing adversity and setback, it's helpful to use language that is temporary in nature. Otherwise, it just feels completely insurmountable. I'm really struggling at the moment with my workload. I'm really feeling burnt out today. These are the words that we can use that create this temporary thing. Because if it's temporary, then there is a glimmer of hope. There is always a glimmer of hope. The second thing that Premier League managers do, the letter E in the word test, is that they will highlight some of the external things that affected the result that were beyond their control. So they might refer to the poor refereeing, although supposedly there's less of that now with VAR. Or they might say that they're missing key players. Now, some leaders would say that's just excuses. Why are they making excuses? It's not excuses. It's highlighting the external factors that are affecting this setback. And within some of the external factors, there is learning and insight. So you could say, I'm really struggling at the moment. I'm having so much work coming at me from so many different areas that may be beyond your control. And on top of that, I've got my mum who's in hospital. These are the external factors, and it's helpful to acknowledge them and to be real about them. The third thing that a good Premier League manager will do is there'll be some specifics. We created a lot of chances, but we weren't clinical enough with them. Now, the important thing with specifics is that you are specific about the setback, about what you're facing, and that you're not blaming people and you're not blaming yourself. And you always know with a Premier League manager that they're on their way out because they start blaming their players. And once they start blaming their players, there's no way back for them. They may not get sacked at that point, but the writing is always on the wall when a manager starts blaming his or her players. And the last thing that they do, the last letter T, is that they find something to be thankful about. They may say, but if we keep creating chances like that, we will turn this around. I was really impressed with the spirit of the players. We kept trying for the entire 90 minutes. I've seen Premier League managers where their team was so poor that the only thing they could be thankful about was that the fans were still singing for us at the end of the game. But they will find something to be thankful for. And often it's hard to find something to be thankful for because the event, the thing you're facing just is so all-consuming. But maybe therefore, if you can't obviously find something to be thankful for, you then have to say, well, what could have happened that would have made this an awful lot worse? Because once you start doing that kind of thinking, you can usually find something to feel thankful for quite quickly. But again, having some of these structures just in place in your mind, a little bit like the time planning in the day just trying to keep yourself on track when you are working at home so that you're as efficient as you can be. These are some of the things. They won't take away the all-consuming workload, but they will help you in dealing with that workload. They will, and like the happy anchor, they will help give you some sense of grounding, I suppose, so that you're not just completely overwhelmed. Now, I'm conscious of the time. It's 1:45, and I've been talking a long time, and this was not going to be me just talking. So does anyone have any questions about what we've discussed, or any queries about burnout, or any thoughts about happy anchor or the test model that I've just shared? Just open that up now. So any questions, anybody?
Someone did ask earlier if there's a difference between burnout and chronic fatigue.
I personally don't think there is. I think there is confusion. If you look at the debate at the moment around burnout, like I say, with depression, is it burnout, is it depression? The HR world would probably say the difference between depression and burnout is that burnout is work, depression is a wider thing. I think we could get very pedantic about labels. So for me, where I don't think that there particularly is. I think the depression, chronic fatigue, burnout, they are all very closely interlinked. But like I say, the HR thinking would say that yes, but burnout is the work thing, whereas chronic fatigue and depression, these are like caused by wider things. But if you think about long working hours, the work pouring in, you're always available, lack of appreciation and technology, is if you think about those putting pressure on burnout at work, well, there's loads of reasons at home of things that can happen that add to burnout. Financial pressures, relationship breakdown, abusive relationships, parenting, caring, living next to a neighbor from hell. I mean, I know people that live next door to neighbors from hell. It has absolutely eaten them up. So we all face triggers. We all have to contend with triggers at work and at home. But is it chronic fatigue? Is it burnout? Is it depression? I think they're all closely interlinked.
We've just had another one come in the chat there. She's saying, in burnout situation, is it better to be on sickness leave or try to manage it and solve the problem?
That is, I mean, it's a very individual question. I think for organizations where they've got staff going off sick, whether it's burnout or whether it's stress related, then there needs to be some questions asked, some things put in place. And so some of the things that I see that really work well is where you have these holding psychologically safe spaces where people are opening up and talking about their mental health. There's a real focus within businesses to take that very seriously. So, and it helps where you've got leaders within organizations opening up about their own mental health and their own challenges. That can create this kind of ripple effect where, oh, if the business leader's doing it, this is okay for us to do it. There's things like where I've seen teams in team meetings where the first 5 or 10 minutes of every team meeting is about mental health, and it's a free for all about how you're feeling, what you're struggling with, and then you sort of put it to one side and get on with the meeting, and that can be a team's, and so it's down to the team. But if you're an employer and you've got people going off sick or burnt out, then you need to put some things in place. You need to take it seriously, because then it just creates more pressure on those that are left in the business. If you yourself are the person burning out, I always think it's better to try and manage it, to try and have that conversation. But if your employers are not listening, they're not giving you the support, they're not taking it seriously, then clearly you may need to go on sickness leave. But I always think it's better to try and solve the problem by having that conversation with your employer. And some employers are very helpful and some are not.
Hi Andrew, I was just going to come in there and just discuss a stress-based work risk assessment. It's something I've been currently working with the HR team, especially for return to work. We've now had a couple of employees, key workers status, we take all general waste, burn it in an incinerator and create electricity off it that powers hospitals, all the shops. So our guys have been on the front line while the majority of the management team have been home working. We've recently went back, but now we noticed a downward trend in sickness and absence, and there's been a couple of employees that have indicated stressful working environments. So we've been spending a lot of time on that risk assessment, and it's worked, really worked, and just sitting people down and speaking to them face to face.
Yeah.
As humans, I'm a big believer we should be doing that anyway, but yeah, it's good. And I think for everybody that works in a business, having that relationship with the HR department, it does work as well. So
yeah, and I think relational leaders, it's so hard when you're managing a team and you've got so many things that you're responsible for. It's so easy to fall out of the habit of being really relational with them. Hey, how are you? Taking that time to find out how they are, because you just got stuff to do. We all do that, and as I say, I think a natural response when we're under pressure is to put our heads down and think about just our own space and what we ourselves are delivering. But I think relational leadership is just so important. And when I was really struggling in the abusive marriage, for some of that time I was self-employed, but for the early years I was employed, and I was a useless employee. I was always last in, first out. I was unfocused. I was caught falling asleep on the phone to a client, but I'd been up till 3 in the morning managing suicide attempts and things from my ex-wife. But I never felt I could tell my boss. I never had that relationship with my line managers that I could say, this stuff's going on, I'm really struggling, I'm really sorry, there was never that. And that was back in 2000. My hope today is that our leaders and managers are better equipped. There's more awareness that where we have poor performance, that we can have that. Are you okay? Is everything all right? Because some of it will be work-based pressure, and some of it will be stuff at home that they won't want to tell you. Who wants to open up about financial concerns that they're in debt? They've got the bailiffs at their door. No one wants to be open about that. But somehow we have to create these spaces where people could say to you, actually, I've got the bailiffs on my door. That
was going to be one of my questions, Andrew. So sometimes workers are their own worst enemy. Overtime, they'll work exceptional hours, and the company could be liable for that as well, because it's typical. They'll put the working time directive sign off on that you could work as many hours as you want, and employees will work ridiculous hours and they're burning themselves out, and they're coming up saying, I'm tired. And I'm like, well, if you look how many hours you're working, it's clear evidence as well. So it's hard.
Yeah, and I think the thing about long hours, it's easy to jump to the conclusion that it's the company's fault driving their staff, and that's often the perception we have. But I know a lot of people that they drive themselves hard because they're thinking about the next promotion, and I'm not going to get noticed working from home, so I'll do all these extra hours. Or it could be their own business, and you tell yourself, as long as I work really hard, I work ridiculous hours, and then at some point in the future I'll be able to step back, and whenever that is. So we are often our own worst enemies. And again, there are some companies that have the technology in place to shut down emails so people can't access them after a certain time. But again, I think it's having that conversation with employees and having that understanding with them, and getting to the bottom. Why on earth are they pushing themselves and working those excessive hours? Some of it as well is, I think, trying to encourage people to believe that if you work less hours, overall your output will be better because you will be more productive.
Yeah.
But it's a hard one, because that feels counterintuitive. And I know as a self-employed guy, I just want to work loads of hours, taking time out in the day to go for a run. But yet, when I do that, I'm so productive afterwards. But yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I'll pass on to Dawn. I've noticed she's got her hand up.
Thanks, Gregor. Yeah, no, I was just going to come in to say that, do you think that the whole working from home thing has exacerbated that people feel like they have to work harder because, or be seen to be present on things like Teams and emails, otherwise it looks like they're possibly not working?
Yeah,
I think that has been a real key factor in people working longer than they ever, you know, you could go into work at 8:30 and leave at 4:30 if that was your allotted hours, and you would never have thought about it before. But I think people feel that they have to be online, if you like, all the time to show that they are actually working. I just wondered if you've noticed any change in that with some of the talks that you've been present at.
I think that is absolutely spot on. I notice a real fear of not being noticed for promotion now that they're not in the office. And so trying to make up for that by just being online and available. And so, yes, exactly. I think working from home has exacerbated that. I think working from home, perhaps not for people on the session, or maybe I think for a lot of people, when you were in the office, some of your routine was structured for you. And so now you're working from home, you're having to create your own structure. And that's quite hard if you're not used to doing that before, as well as just not getting out of the house. I mean, it's quite a brave move, isn't it, to say, well, look, I'm not going to be on any Teams meetings tomorrow because I'm going for a walk, my mid-morning walk. That's what I do. That's quite a bold step to make. But, you know, if more of us could do that and open up and say, well, why would I be doing that? And how does that help me? Then that is helpful.
Andrew, if I can just come
Thank
in,
you.
it's Sandy again. Thanks for that response to Don. Yeah, I worked from home for a few months in the early days, and I worked for a retail distribution symbol group, quite a big symbol group in Scotland. And, you know, for the last 18, 19 months, I think there's been less than 6 or 7 days in the week. It's just constant. And they're obviously looking to individuals like myself, I'm a small team. The biggest problem I had found was communication. Now, although we're saying communication now, Zoom and all these things have been wonderful, what I found in the first 12 weeks was that was the biggest challenge, and that still continues to be. Because when I worked in the office, as I do, you know, it's an open planned office, thinking about open planned office, COVID, there could be 40 people in there, and that's the team that we all deal with situations as they occur. The biggest problem was I would try and make 40 phone calls a day, trying to get in touch with people to deal with situations, from environmental health officers to the HSE, to COVID positive test results. Well, I can go on and on and on. That's just one subject. Would you agree, or from the people you're speaking about, that communication was less of a benefit when you're working from home for the business that I'm in, should we say, rather than those that were perhaps at home tending to gardens and a few other things that they were then suggesting that, Sandy, your garden must be looking great, statements, which is quite offensive actually, but it's the expectation. Whereas I've been trying on the phone, trying to send emails, no responses, and then the following day comes, you're all that pressure that you couldn't resolve yesterday, that and otherwise 2 years ago was smooth. Meetings, you can go to the desk, you can speak to somebody right away and deal with it, and then you go into your next challenge. And there wasn't the challenges then as they are now. And everything's grown faster in communication. So would you say communication, people, the perception at the moment that it's improved massively and it's most bestest thing ever, or has it been very challenging?
I think it's a real mixed bag. I talk to people who love the new, the thing that we have. I guess here, I hear all the time this new hybrid perfect thing we're going to have, where we can meet in the office, but we'll be at home a bit more, better for the environment. But I would agree that I think if you were in a team, if you were a lucky enough person to be in a team where it was a healthy, dynamic office environment, you chat to each other really easily, then for sure your communication is going to be badly messed up by Teams and everything else. I hate Teams. We're on Zoom, but you know the quality of signal, people cutting in, people cutting out. People in the background, you think you're talking to them, they move and they've lost half their head and their arm. And so I definitely think that if you had good communication before, it may not have been helped by the changes that we now have. And the other thing that I find is I used to deliver a full day workshop face to face, because there's just so much stuff you can do. But now on Zoom, I don't deliver for more than 2 hours. People would just be so bored. And so I think the screen fatigue is really hard now for chats. I try and have phone calls now because I'm just tired of Zoom meetings. I really am. And so I think the screen fatigue is part of it as well. It's not helping communication. Does that answer your question? It's more of a comment, really, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because just tail on end, I don't take up too much people's time, but yeah, I've seen major benefits like tonight. You know, if you have people joining from Hong Kong tonight, say, that's wonderful, and they've got opportunities they otherwise wouldn't get if they had to travel. I'm just saying, when you're talking in a business where your site visit, so if we went to a store, we can go there as I was today, but 6 weeks ago I couldn't, and the complications that surrounds that, I'll try and get through to that person, but they've got another 19 departments trying to get through as well. So expanding the communication, and it just, to me, it builds up, and by the end of the week, 4,000 things you've been trying to do, and that is without a joke, you've probably got around about 12 of them, and then you're looking forward to the next week. Really not, because it's going to be much more of the same, and that's the way this whole thing's been going. That's just me.
And what Dawn's just put a message on the chat saying that people are missing the corridor conversations. I don't know if you've read Matthew Syed's Rebel Ideas book, his latest book. It's a really good book about creativity and how creativity thrives. Whether you call it corridor conversations, I call it coffee conversations, where people are going and making coffee and going to. But this is where the magic happens. That is where the magic really comes in, where people really come alive in those coffee corridor moments. And of course, those aren't happening at the moment. So I definitely think communication has been negatively affected, I suppose. And yeah. It's 8 o'clock. I'm conscious of time. Does anybody have a question or a comment that they want to make? Or do I want to, shall I throw it back to you, Anthony? What do you think? I can't see any other questions in the chat at the moment.
If there's any other burning questions, we're happy to take them. Otherwise, we can hand back to the chair or vice chair to close the session.
Yeah, Marion, you want to answer your question? I noticed you've had your hand up for quite a bit of time.
It's not much a question, it's more comment. I predominantly work in HR, so we've had the same problem as the health and safety professionals. We've had to suddenly become experts in something we don't know much about. One thing I am finding is I'm currently working with a business, and we have a team meeting every morning. And the first thing we do is our mood board. So how is everybody? And there's various, there's focus, there's stretch, there's bored, satisfied, and it goes from happy green face to a very sad red face. And then once we find out where everybody is, we're then asking, what is it? Why do you feel like that today? And it could be something simple, like my kids kept me up last night.
Yeah.
Or for me, I've just got a lot of work at the moment, so I'm under a lot of pressure. The person who's supposed to be helping me is actually off sick just now, so I'm doing that myself. But it's amazing. I've never been in a team like it before. You do this in the morning, you get messages throughout the day. Does anyone need support with anything? The communication is great. What I found today, though, was I switched off my Teams. I switched off my email, and I got so much more done.
Yeah.
And it was just what we've got is we can put up on our Teams, do not disturb. So I had that on all my messaging services. I had do not disturb. And it was fine, but it's taking the step to say, look, guys, I'm actually snowed under and I'm taking the time to do this. I'll check back with you later.
Yeah.
I'm being able to do it.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate you sharing, Marion. And I think where all of you will have some tasks that are quite complex and creative. And when you've got things pinging all over the place and then you see someone's trying to contact you, just can't get into it in the same way. So I think being able to switch off, like I say, for me, it's helpful when I schedule the time in. Otherwise, I just don't do it. I'm not disciplined enough. If I haven't got a guide, I've got a guide, like what I have in my A4 hardback diary, then I tend to follow it. If I don't have a guide, I'm all over the place. But different people work in different ways. But I love these ideas you shared about your team though, and what you're doing with the board and that, the red, the happy face, the sad face. These are just little things that help people to be real and open up and share, which is just so important when we're under so much pressure. I think it's great.
So as I say, it could be anything at all. You know, it could be you didn't get any sleep last night, or you woke up and you're just not feeling right, or you're overworked, and then the team will discuss. Right. You know, right, what have you got on? Can I take some of that? Can I do that for you? Yeah. I've never found this before in a team before, and I find it really strange because everybody's offering to help. But we also have agile, well, what we call agile working. So yes, hours of work are between 8 and 4:30. Some of the people in the team have got kids. So they will work 8 to 8:30, disappear for half an hour, log back on again. Yeah. You go out in the afternoon. If you've got a doctor's appointment, you log off and you go. You come back. So one of the girls works after the kids go to bed because she's seeing to them during the day. And basically the rules are, if the work gets done, you attend meetings you're supposed to attend, then everybody's happy. And it works really well because people are available at different times. Yeah. So overall, the service is better.
Yeah.
Very good, Marion. Thank you very much. I'm interested in that mood board, so expect an email for a photograph, please.
Fine. Yeah, no problem.
I'm just going to pass on to Ian Leslie just to do a thanks, Andrew.
Yes, thanks very much, Gregor. Thanks obviously to yourself, Andrew, but thanks to everyone on the call as well for the fantastic engagement. More importantly, thanks, Andrew, for that presentation. Fantastic. Thanks very much for that on behalf of the Forth Tay Branch. It's really appreciated, and certainly there's some great stuff there that I'll be taking forward, certainly within my organisation. I know that guys on the call will be as well. So thanks very much for that.
You're welcome. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, and have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and likewise thanks to everybody else for attending. Just a bit of information, we're currently working towards a face-to-face meeting. I know that'll be a very welcome addition. It's not finalised, we actually have to put a business case forward to IOSH, so we're looking at having that in March sometime. So we're working with Anthony, who's on the call now, so keep an eye out for your emails and see if we could progress that forward. But on behalf of everyone, thanks especially to you again, Andrew. Hopefully you will get a dog. I've recently just bought a second puppy for the children, and it's fantastic. That's definitely my get out. If I'm feeling stressed, get the older dog and just go for a walk and relax, put the AirPods in and listen to some music. And it's amazing how your mind could just switch off. But anyway, we'll leave it there, and thanks for everybody for attending, and good night. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.